The gravel crunched under my sneakers as I ran up the driveway, my heart pounding in my chest. Something felt wrong. The air was too quiet, the space too empty. My car was gone, just a dark oil stain on the concrete where my Mustang used to sit. I stood there, staring at the empty spot, my keys dangling uselessly from my hand. My throat went tight. "Dad!" I called out, my voice cracking. He appeared from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag, a folded check tucked in his shirt pocket. He was smiling, actually smiling, like he'd just done me the biggest favor of my life. "Don't look so dramatic, Caleb," he said, waving the check like it was a winning lottery ticket. It was just collecting dust anyway. Just collecting dust. That car was the first thing I'd ever bought with my own money. Every dollar saved from weekend jobs, late shifts, missed hangouts with friends. I could still remember the day I brought it home, how proud I felt, how free. And now it was gone. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. My hands were trembling. My dad just stood there, grinning, completely oblivious to the fact that he'd just stolen a piece of my soul. "Dad, you sold my car?" The words finally burst out of me, without even asking me. He shrugged, tucking the rag into his back pocket. "It was parked for weeks, Caleb. You weren't using it. I got a good price for it, too. You should be grateful." Grateful? My voice was shaking now. "That was my car. I paid for it. You had no right." "I had every right." He cut me off, his tone going cold and flat. "You're living under my roof. That car was taking up space in my driveway. I made an executive decision." Mom appeared at the kitchen door, dry her hands on a dish towel. "Paul, maybe you should have told him first," she said quietly. Dad shot her a look that could freeze fire. "I'm not discussing this, Marion. What's done is done." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about the car being used. This wasn't about space or money or practicality. This was about control, about reminding me who held the power in this house. I turned and walked away, his voice following me like smoke. "You should be thanking me for getting rid of that toy." That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the empty keychain in my hand. The little leather tag with my initials, CT, mocked me from the metal ring. Dad sold my car without asking. He regretted it when the buyer showed up at his office. The thought came to me suddenly, like a whisper from somewhere deep inside. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to do something my dad had never expected me to do. I was going to think. This wasn't about a car anymore. It was about power, about respect, about proving that I wasn't just some kid he could push around whenever he felt like flexing his authority. And I was done letting him hold any power over me. My name is Caleb Turner. I'm 26 years old, and I've spent most of my life being the disappointment. My dad, Paul Turner, built a small construction empire from the ground up. He's the kind of man who believes hard work is the only work worth doing. And if you're not breaking your back for a paycheck, you're wasting your life. My older brother, Vincent, is his golden child. Vincent works at the company, drives a company truck, and gets praised for breathing. He's everything my dad wanted in a son: tough, practical, unquestioning. Me? I'm the artsy one, the one who went to community college for graphic design instead of learning how to lay concrete. The one who freelances from a cramped apartment instead of showing up at the family business every morning. That Mustang, my Mustang, was the only thing in my life that Dad didn't have control over. It was mine, earned, paid for, free, until he took it. 5. I called the buyer the next morning. My hands were shaking as I dialed the number Dad had scribbled on a sticky note and left on the kitchen counter. The phone rang twice before a smooth, professional voice answered. "Gordon Lee speaking." "Hi, Mr. Lee. My name is Caleb Turner. I believe you just bought my car from my father." There was a pause. Caleb. "Yes, I did. Beautiful vehicle. Your father said you weren't using it anymore." My jaw clenched. He didn't exactly ask my permission. Another pause, longer this time. "I see. That's unfortunate. Did you buy it for yourself?" I asked, something in his tone making me curious. "Actually, no. I bought it for a client. Someone who appreciates classic cars." He cleared his throat. "You have an interesting family, Caleb. I'll be in touch." The line went dead. I sat there, staring at my phone, his words echoing in my head. I'll be in touch. What did that mean? Sunday dinner at my parents' house was unbearable. Vincent was in rare form, cracking jokes at my expense while Dad laughed along. At least someone wanted your car, little brother. Maybe you should have actually driven it once in a while. Dad slapped the table, laughing hard enough that his face turned red. That's what I've been saying. Kid lets a perfectly good car rot in the driveway. Mom sat silently across from me, pushing salad around her plate, refusing to meet my eyes. I smiled, not because I thought it was funny, not because I was okay with any of this, but because for the first time in my life, their mockery didn't sting the way it used to. It motivated me. I learned something my dad never had: patience. And patience, I was starting to realize, was the most dangerous weapon of all. 6 months earlier, I'd worked freelance on a property development pitch for a local firm. The project was big, luxury condos downtown, the kind of development that could put a small company on the map. The lead investor had been impressive. Sharp suit, quiet power, the kind of presence that made everyone in the room sit up straighter. He'd introduced himself as Gordon Lee. At the end of the presentation, he'd pulled me aside. "You have an instinct for details, Caleb. That's rare. If you're ever looking for more work, reach out." I'd tucked his business card into my wallet and forgotten about it. Until now, my dad had just sold my car to Gordon Lee. The same Gordon Lee whose company had been courting Turner Construction for months, trying to land a major contract. The same Gordon Lee who'd just told me he'd be in touch. Suddenly, everything felt different. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning. Not Mom, not my friend Kyle, not even Vincent, though he wouldn't have cared anyway. I went to work like normal, designing logos and websites for small businesses. But every evening, I pulled out my laptop and started researching. I mapped out Turner Construction's structure, their contracts, their partnerships, their vulnerabilities. Dad loved to brag about his deals at Sunday dinners, dropping names and numbers like he was untouchable. But what he didn't understand, what he'd never understood, was how fragile trust was in business. One crack in the foundation, and the whole thing could crumble. I just had to find the crack. And if I was patient enough, I knew my dad would show it to me himself. A week later, Gordon Lee emailed me. The subject line was simple: "About your car." My pulse spiked as I opened it. "Caleb, I think it's time we discuss what your father really sold. If you're available, let's meet for coffee. There's something I'd like to propose." Best, Gordon Lee. I read it 3 times, my heart hammering against my ribs. This wasn't about the car anymore. I could feel it. This was about something much bigger. I typed back a response: "Tomorrow works. Name the place." His reply came within minutes: 10 a.m. Bluebird Cafe downtown. "See you then." I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Whatever was about to happen, I had a feeling my life was about to change. The Bluebird Cafe was one of those trendy downtown spots with exposed brick walls and overpriced lattes. Gordon was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 coffees waiting. He stood and shook my hand. "Caleb, thanks for coming. Thanks for reaching out," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. He didn't waste time. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a set of keys, my car keys, and slid them across the table. "You'll want these back," he said. I stared at the keys, my throat tight. "I don't understand." Gordon leaned back, a small smile playing at his lips. "Your father's company has been trying to land a city contract with my firm for months. Big project. Could set Turner Construction up for years." I nodded slowly. "I've heard him mention it." "Well," Gordon continued, "I've been looking for a consultant. Someone with an eye for detail. Someone who understands design and logistics." He paused. "I think I just found him." My heart was pounding now. "You want me to consult on the project?" "I want you to oversee it," Gordon said, "under your own name. And I want your input on whether Turner Construction is the right firm for the job." I sat back, stunned. He was handing me power. Real power. The kind my dad had spent my whole life dangling over my head. "Why?" I asked. Gordon's smile widened. "Because your father sold something that wasn't his to sell. Just like he runs his business, without respect. I don't work with people like that. But you." He tapped the table. "You're different." Gordon wasn't vindictive. He was strategic. Over the next hour, he laid out his plan. Turner Construction had submitted a proposal for the city project, but there were holes in it, budget inconsistencies, timeline issues, missing permits. Things my dad had overlooked because he trusted Vincent to manage the details. If your dad values power, Gordon said, stirring his coffee, let's teach him the cost of losing it. We spent the next 2 weeks reviewing the proposal together. I pointed out every flaw, every oversight, every corner they tried to cut. Gordon took notes, nodding thoughtfully. Good, he said after one particularly long session. Let's see how the Turners react when you're the one holding the pen. I felt something shift inside me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the disappointment. I wasn't the kid who didn't measure up. I was the one in control. At home, Dad was insufferable. Every Sunday dinner, he bragged about how close he was to sealing the biggest deal of his career. He'd lean back in his chair, hands behind his head, talking about how this contract was going to put Turner Construction on the map. I kept quiet, spooning mashed potatoes onto my plate, pretending I didn't care. But inside, I was counting days. Everything was moving exactly as it should. Gordon had scheduled the final review meeting for the following week. The board would make their decision then, and I was going to be in that room. Vincent smirked at me across the table. Don't worry, Caleb. When Dad closes this deal, maybe he'll buy you a new car. Dad laughed. Mom looked at me with something like pity. I just smiled and took another bite. Gordon called me 3 days before the meeting. I want you on the review panel, he said, under a neutral title, Consultant for Urban Design. Your father won't know you're involved until he walks into the room. My stomach flipped. You want me to be there? When he presents. I do. And I want you to ask the hard questions. The ones he can't answer. I hesitated. This was it. The moment everything would change. Once I walked into that room, there was no going back. Okay, I said. I'm in. Gordon's voice softened. This isn't about revenge, Caleb. It's about accountability. Your father needs to learn that actions have consequences. I hung up and sat in silence for a long time. He was right. This wasn't revenge. It was justice. The day of the meeting, I wore my best suit. My hands were sweating as I walked into the downtown conference room, but I kept my face calm. Gordon was already there, along with 3 other board members. He nodded at me as I took my seat at the table. Gentlemen, Gordon said, we're ready to begin. Please send in the Turner Construction team. The door opened. My dad walked in first, Vincent right behind him, both of them carrying binders and laptops. Dad was smiling, confident, already shaking hands with the board members. Then he saw me. His smile froze. His hand stopped mid-shake. Caleb. I met his eyes, my voice steady. Mr. Turner, please have a seat. Let's begin. The room went completely silent. Dad's face went from confusion to shock to something close to panic. Vincent just stared at me, his mouth hanging open. Gordon gestured to the chairs. Shall we? Dad sat down slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. I could see the gears turning in his head, try to figure out what I was doing here, how I'd gotten into this room. But he didn't have time to ask. The presentation was about to begin. Dad's presentation was polished. I had to give him that. He spoke confidently, clicking through slides, throwing out numbers and timelines like he'd done this 1,000 times. But I knew where the cracks were. Halfway through, I raised my hand. Mr. Turner, can you clarify the budget allocation for materials? The numbers don't match the timeline you've proposed. Dad blinked. I'm sorry. Page 12, I said, flipping open my folder. You've allocated 2 months for foundation work, but the budget suggests you're cutting costs on reinforced steel. That's a safety issue. Vincent jumped in. We've accounted for that. Have you? I looked at him. Because the permits filed with the city don't reflect any adjustments for alternative materials. The board members were taking notes now, their expressions shifting from polite interest to concern. Dad's jaw flexed. He glanced at Vincent, who was frantically flipping through his binder. We'll need to review that, Dad said tightly. I nodded. I think that would be wise. For the next 30 minutes, I asked question after question. Budget oversights, missing permits, timeline inconsistencies, things Dad had missed because he trusted Vincent to handle the details, things I'd spent 2 weeks uncovering. Dad kept glancing at me, his eyes filled with something I'd never seen before. Fear. When the presentation ended, Gordon thanked my dad and Vincent for their time. We'll be in touch with our decision within the week. Dad stood, his face red, his hands shaking slightly as he gathered his materials. He didn't look at me as he walked out, but Vincent did. He stopped by my chair, leaning down so only I could hear. "What the hell are you doing?" "My job," I said simply. After they left, Gordon turned to the board. "I think we've seen enough. The Turner proposal has too many red flags. I recommend we move forward with another firm." The board agreed. Just like that, it was over. Turner Construction had lost the biggest deal of their career, and I was the reason why. That night, Dad showed up at my apartment. He didn't knock. He pounded on the door so hard I thought he was going to break it down. When I opened it, he was standing there, his face twisted with rage. "You humiliated me in front of my clients." "You humiliated me first," I said quietly. He pushed past me into my apartment, pacing like a caged animal. "Over a damn car? You destroyed my business over a CR?" "No, Dad." I closed the door. "I destroyed your business because you don't respect people. You don't respect me, you don't respect Mom, and you sure as hell don't respect the people you work with." He slammed his fist on my kitchen counter. "I gave you everything. A roof over your head, food, clothes. You gave me the bare minimum," I interrupted. "And then you sold the one thing I worked for. The one thing that was mine." He stared at me, breathing hard, like he was seeing me for the first time. "This isn't about the car," I said. "It's about respect." He didn't have an answer for that. Word spread fast in the construction world. Turner Construction lost the city contract. Then another client pulled out. Then another. Suppliers started asking for payment up front. Banks started calling about loans. The cracks I'd exposed in that conference room had become chasms. And while Dad scrambled to hold his company together, Gordon called me with an offer. "We'd like you to oversee the city project," he said, "under your own name. Full credit." I sat down, my hands shaking. "Are you serious?" "You earned it, Caleb. You did the work. You asked the right questions. This is yours." I signed a contract 2 days later. My name, Caleb Turner, was going to be on the biggest development project the city had seen in years. The son my dad had called a disappointment was now the one everyone wanted to work with. And Dad couldn't do a thing about it. Signing that contract felt surreal. I kept staring at my name on the paper, half expecting someone to tell me it was a mistake. But it wasn't. For the first time in my life, I wasn't proving my dad wrong. I was proving myself right. I'd spent years being told I was wasting my time, chasing dreams that didn't matter, pursuing a career that wasn't real work. But here I was, leading a multi-million-dollar project, getting calls from firms who wanted my expertise, building something that would stand long after my dad's company crumbled. And the best part? I'd done it my way, with creativity, with strategy, with patience, not with brute force, not with control, with respect. Vincent showed up at my apartment a week later. He looked terrible, unshaven, his shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. "Dad's losing it," he said. "The company's bleeding money. Clients are walking. You got to fix this." I almost laughed. "Why would I do that?" "Because you're his son." Vincent's voice cracked. "Because this is our family." I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but pity. He'd spent his whole life following Dad's orders, never questioning, never thinking for himself. And now that the empire was crumbling, he didn't know what to do. "I am his son," I said. "That's exactly why I learned from his mistakes." Vincent stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "You're really going to let him fail?" "I'm going to let him face the consequences of his actions," I said, just like he should have done a long time ago. Vincent left without another word. 2 weeks later, Dad's company lost another major contract. His investors started pulling out, rumors spreading about unstable management and unsafe practices. The cracks I'd exposed weren't just visible now. They were gaping holes that everyone could see. Dad called me once, his voice tired and broken. "Was this you? Did you do this?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to lie, to let him think it was bad luck or poor management or anything but me. But I didn't. "You sold my car, Dad." I said quietly. I sold the truth. He hung up without another word. Then came the moment Dad couldn't escape. Gordon Lee showed up at Turner Construction's office, unannounced, unexpected, carrying a manila envelope. I wasn't there, but Vincent told me about it later, his voice shaking with disbelief. Gordon walked into Dad's office and placed the envelope on his desk. Inside was the title to my Mustang. "You sold this without permission," Gordon said. "Just like you run your business, without respect, without integrity." Dad stared at the paper, speechless. "Consider this a full circle lesson," Gordon continued. "Your son is everything you're not. Thoughtful, strategic, honest. And that's why he's succeeding while you're failing." He walked out, leaving Dad sitting alone in his office, staring at the car title he'd signed away. The title that had cost him everything. Within a month, Dad resigned as CEO of Turner Construction. Vincent took over, but even he couldn't stop the bleeding. Clients were gone. Contracts were canceled. The empire Dad had built through stubbornness and control collapsed quietly, like it had been waiting for this moment all along. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just watched it happen, one piece at a time. Because this wasn't about revenge. It never had been. It was about proving that respect matters, that integrity matters, that you can't build anything lasting on a foundation of control and fear. Dad learned that lesson the hard way. And honestly, I think he needed to. 6 months later, my project was finished. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was held on a bright Saturday morning. City officials were there, along with investors, contractors, and reporters. My name was on every banner, every press release, every credit line. Gordon shook my hand in front of the cameras. "You earned this, Caleb. Every bit of it." For the first time in years, I actually believed it. I looked out at the crowd and saw Mom standing near the back, tears in her eyes. She gave me a small, proud smile. Dad wasn't there. Neither was Vincent, but I didn't need them to be. This moment was mine, built on my own terms, earned through my own work. And that was enough. Months later, I drove past my parents' house, the same driveway where this all began. The house looked smaller now, quieter. The driveway was empty except for Mom's sedan. I pulled over and sat there for a moment, staring at the spot where my Mustang used to be. That car was back in my garage now. Gordon had returned it to me after everything was over, the keys wrapped in a note that said, "Some things are worth fighting for." I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the planning, the confrontation, the consequences. And I realized something. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it isn't about destroying someone or making them suffer. Sometimes it's simply about living the life they swore you couldn't. About proving that respect, patience, and integrity will always outlast control and arrogance. I started my car, my Mustang, and drove away. Behind me, the house grew smaller in my rearview mirror until it disappeared completely. And I didn't look back.